as I mentioned last time, we hope that you folks find this of value. And John, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll walk through the intros and before we begin. But fundamentally, what we've tried to do with Workshop Wednesday is really introduce a new format that's really, dedicated to your needs as a client of Agile Fleet. I think a lot of you folks know that we send out a monthly survey, and with that survey, one of the things that we ask is, how are you doing? How are you feeling with Fleet Commander, and what can we do to help you? And so out of that is where Workshop Wednesday originated. Basically clients said, gee, I do okay, but I'd really like some help here, here, and here. And so what we've done is we've taken some of that feedback and content and, put these sessions together. So, as you'll see when we get towards the end, we'll be doing, we've got an agenda for the next, 3 webinars coming up. At the end of the webinar, we will send you an email, with a survey as well as links to the content. So certainly tell us what you think and tell us, how we can help you further. Okay. Before we begin, so there's a little bit of just a housekeeping items. So again, we are recording this webinar, and you should see a little, this meeting is being recorded, banner at the top. And then as we, finish up the webinar, a copy of the recording and the deck will be available for download. You can use your camera or not. It's really up to you. I have muted everybody in the group. And so, really for the purposes of this webinar, it's chat only. So you don't have to have your audio on at all. And then like anything else, as we show you things or recommend tools and certainly changes, you want to make sure that you consult your IT department or organization in terms of, what's allowable before you begin and do it on your own. And then, these are just examples by us. We don't endorse anything specifically. So that's the fine print. And then, getting into this now, in terms of, asking questions. So again, I think a lot of you folks are now familiar with Microsoft Teams. There's a little chat icon at the very top of your Teams window. It's typically to the right of people, might be to the left of reactions, depending upon, your configuration. But if you, click the chat button and put questions in there, we'll be monitoring them and we'll, make sure that we address them. The thing that we ask you for is, when you do ask a question, just kind of give us a quick, give us your first name and tell us where you're from. So, Joe from Agile or, Jonathan from EPA. Jonathan, I'll use you an example today and, we can kind of get going on that. And with that, we'll get going. So, I think a lot of you folks know John. We kind of work this thing, together. And John likes to present. So John's going to present today and he's going to walk you through the agenda. And, we've spent a lot of time on this. I think it's going to give you some really great information on some things to do and not do and how do you make your site better. And that's really, that's what we're all about, is helping you succeed. So thanks, everybody. And John, with that, take it away.
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Certainly, as Joe said, I like to present. I enjoy putting this together and I enjoy sharing with you from my experience from 10 years as working with Indiana University using Fleet Commander. The content of Workshop Wednesdays, this one and all of them, is really based upon that experience combined with best practices that I've learned while working here for Agile, and also from what we learned from you as a client. So what you're going to see today is kind of a combination of all 3 of those. Today's topic, as was, of course, announced, was how to manage and update your welcome page and your site layout. As we dive into that today, we're going to look at the importance of making a great first impression, understanding page templates, looking at the anatomy of the web page and understanding the components, pointing out that there really are 2 different content area types within Fleet Commander page and zone, and how to optimize the use of those, and also where you find how to make these changes within, if it's at an enterprise level setting or a site level on that with those content. We'll also take a look at using editors in working with your layout, using WYSIWYG or HTML, the various FleetCommander tools that tie into those, and also some other tools that you might find helpful as you prepare your web page. And along the way too, we'll take a look at some various web element templates and illustrate those through some examples of some of our selected client layouts. So with that, let's just jump right into this. You know, we all understand the importance of making a first grade impression. You know, what you do and what you say has a big impact on your relationship with those who are around you. You know, we understand that when it comes to a person face-to-face interaction, but that really does also apply in regards to your web presence, and particularly in regards with FleetCommander. You know, what kind of impression are you making with your website? You know, is this your site? You know, I spent time going through about 190 of our client sites in preparation for this presentation. And a lot of times I came across this very look. What this is, and you may not know this, but every FleetCommander page starts off the same. When you're a new client and you go through onboarding, what we do is we build that through a template. And within that template, it's basic information, kind of filler content that's intended to show you potential uses of the site. Unfortunately, what we are finding is that some people simply believe that as with the original content that came when they first started as a client. You know, what's the issue in regards to, you know, the defaults? What's wrong with just leaving those at default? Well, there's a couple issues that you have to consider. You know, when you're just simply using the default settings, your brand is not really reflected well, your logo or your messaging. The value of your users is not conveyed. Your content ends up ultimately being stale. It's not changing at all. Your policies are not communicated properly. Your successes are not documented and told. Your fleet guidances are not shared. There's not tips in regards to driving and safety safety tips. There's oftentimes we find unneeded navigations. There may be menus that you ultimately don't have a use for, and they just sit there and they remain empty. And ultimately, it's just, you know, plain ugly on what you might see. Well, the good news is that you can and you are able to spruce up your FleetCommander site. You can go from just the template to something that's tailored to your operations. And you know, you can have a page that that looks similar to something like this. You know, very attractive, very welcoming. This is the welcome page, and so when your users click on there to make a reservation, you know, they are engaged right away because you're engaging them with the content that you're sharing there. Well, what is the various elements that you can use to engage your users? Well, that's part of understanding the page components. The page components within FleetCommander are similar to most, you know, cloud-based pages and software. It's, you know, you have certain portions like there, number one, you have a header that's at the top of the page, of course, and mirrored on the bottom, of course, by the number 6 there, the footer. These are two sections, two zones that can actually be configured and changed. There's also, you have your number 2, your navigation, the general information. You know, this is basically a menu that takes you from one portion of FleetCommander to another portion, and you can go from each of those steps and go from instructions or policies or vehicles and rates. And within each of those pages, you can present more material. You know, you also have number 3 there, your general content. You know, that's your organization's messaging that's displayed there. Along with that too, you have the ability to have shared images and content, number 4, some pictures that just kind of, you know, bring the user's attention to that portion of the page. You also have, you know, call to actions. There are 5 where you can set it up where instead of just relying upon the navigation menu on the left, you can actually engage your users with a clickable link there within the page. You know, these are all components that can be used within the various pages of FleetCommander. Now, each of these kind of follow within two various types of content. You have page content and you have what I'll describe as zone content. Page content is basically that, the content that resides on a page. And it's basically refers to content that can be changed at a whole level there. Everything that you see in the red box here can be removed except for the very first welcome there at the top. That is what describes what page we are on. Everything after that is something that is configurable and can be changed. In the same fashion, the page content would fall upon those that fall under the information portion of the menu there. Each of those also can be changed with its full content. Now, whenever you're sharing with your page content, you want to be able to share information about the selected topics, and you are able, and tips in regards to doing that, the content that you put on there, focus on ease of use, make the content relevant to the users in the site, keep the content up to date, be concise, embed links to resources, remove links that are not used. As mentioned, sometimes you might not have the need to have rates and vehicle types, or you may not have a list of frequently asked questions that you've compiled yet to place there. If those are items that you're not planning on using, those links can actually be removed, and you'd want to engage client success. We'd be happy to work with you in order to get those removed from your site. In addition to page content, there's also zone content. Those are more specific to portions of the page. They are not specific to the page itself. What I mean by that is, like at the top there, where you have the header, the need help with reservations, that actually is something that spans from page to page. Regardless if you're on the welcome page or the policies page or the contact us page or frequently asked questions, that header is going to stay with the user as they are navigating from page to page. In the same fashion, they're on the footer. The content that can be added there will move from page to page. It's a zone type of content. Also, the zone content, kind of think of in regards to specific directions or instructions or clarifications that you might want to give your users, particularly when they're making reservations. As you see there highlighted on the left under the vehicle use, you have your make reservations, my schedule, my profile, my vehicles. Within each of those, that's specific information that is hard coded into the system. However, as you navigate through your making reservations, there are headers there that can be updated. That's the zone content on that, and we'll show you some examples of that a little bit later on. In accessing and changing this content, it's all done through your configure menu. In most cases, it's going to be configure enterprise and then layout as illustrated through these charts. If you're dealing with page content or you're dealing with zone content, it's going to be found within that configure enterprise layout portion. There are a few exceptions. Those are highlighted there with asterisks. These particular ones are actually configured within the site level. So if you have multiple sites and you're going to put in content, zonal content in regards to the confirmation page for making a reservation, the help text, that's something that you'll need to do with each of your sites because it's specific to each site. That information may change based upon the needs of those reservations that are being made there. One idea that you might want to consider when you're going into configuration and layout, if you're searching for a specific thing in regards to reservations, you go, oh, I remember there's something about making reservations. The list that you're going to find on the configuration is not in alphabetical order. So I recommend that when you go to that page, use Control F and search with the keyword to help you drill down to where the particular content that you're wanting to edit. I find that helpful. I use that myself. One other thing I just want to point out at this point, you notice within the page content, there is the section in regards to policies. Your policies can be updated, and policy is something that's really important. We believe here at Agile Fleet, we believe that you need for a fleet to run properly, everyone needs to understand what the expectations are, and that's done through your policy. And we provide you many tools within FleetCommander to express policy, enforce policy, and communicate that to your users. That's a whole session in of itself. And in fact, we'll cover that topic next month. So this kind of your teaser to join us on the third Wednesday of next month. So we'll go in depth in regards to policy and changing the policies and the various portions of policy enforcement with FleetCommander. Now, when you begin and you start to make changes within FleetCommander, it's something I just wanted to point out and to emphasize to you. It's important for you to always back up your changes before you start making changes. What I mean by that is that what's in there, you want to go ahead and save a copy of what is found or what is currently within, say, your welcome page. When you get started, you don't want to go down the path and all of a sudden realize, oops, I made a mistake, and then not have a way to get back to where you started. So in doing that, the best practice is for you to go ahead and open up either Notepad or Word, create a new document, select the message text that's currently within the portion that you're changing using select all with Control A, copy the message, paste it into that document, and then save it with under a name that you're going to be able to recognize that this is the original welcome text on that. That process of making those changes, like I said, it starts there within your configuration, and then under Enterprise is where you would find, for example, the welcome page. That's what's listed as welcome text here. You see, you would click on the layouts, it would pull up this list here, and you would find that. And when you click on that, down at the bottom, you would get this HTML WYSIWYG based editor. And like I said, in saving it, the best thing to do is always to click on the HTML icon here and copy that rather than copying what you see as the what's presented there. That's what you really want to put into your notepad or into WordPad to save. The nice thing about it, though, is ultimately you don't have to know a thing about HTML to make changes. It's good, and you can actually expand and do a lot of fantastic tricks and images and all if you are versed in HTML, but you don't have to do that. As you see here, what we have is WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, and you can use that to make changes to your layout. You can switch back and forth if you want to, or you can just simply use the WYSIWYG to make those changes. Now you'll see here that these icons that are listed here are very similar to what you things that you might find in regards to a Word layout. You see these highlights in regards to bolding, italicized, underlining, striking the text, the justification, bullets and numbering. All these are similar to what you would see in Word, but don't use that similarity as a justification to go and make all these beautiful layout within Word and then copying that into here. It's not going to work 100%, and it's that because it's not 100% is why we warn you not to. We have seen some sites that have ultimately have become just a jumbled mess because Word actually throws in some HTML tags that are not usable within the system, and so when they're directly copied into the WYSIWYG editor here, it causes that problem, and it takes sometimes a lot of work to figure out that was the root problem of why your site now looks nothing like you intended it to look like. So again, use this as to make those changes within FleetCommander. go back to one screen here. The interesting thing about the WYSIWYG versus HTML, ultimately what you're doing is when you type in text in with the WYSIWYG, what ends up happening is that behind the scenes, it is converting it to HTML text on that and tags. So ultimately, if you click on the HTML icon here, you're going to see what ends up being what all this translates to behind the scenes, if you're so interested in looking at that. Again, many tools that are found here that you might be familiar with in regards to if you use Word. You have the ability to change the font style and the size. You have the ability to change the color of the text. You have the ability to change the color of the backgrounds. You have the ability in addition to those items, you have the ability to insert hyperlinks, insert images, insert files by using the WYSIWYG. And when you do that, if you're going to enter an image, the way that you're going to want to do that is you're going to first want to load your image into FleetCommander itself. We have, through what's called Content Manager, we've given you the ability to take images and store them within FleetCommander so that you have access for such cases like this. It used to be that was done through documents, but through our recent changes, we've moved that those type of images and that type of capability to the Content Manager. The reason why is Content Manager is intended for items that you want the public or your users to have access to, and whereas documents is something where you're able to store documents without it actually having a way to get to it, the end user. You have access to those, but not the end user on that. So what you would end up doing with the Content Manager, if you want to use that image, you first load them to the Content Manager. You use that by adding the documents. After you do so, what you can do is go by clicking in the edit pencil there. That brings you into that file and gives you the URL where that's stored. If you do a copy and take that over to your insert image, paste it into the web address, label it, and then give it a pixel size, what you'll end up having then is the ability to load that image into your layout. A point I wanted to bring out in regards to that documents versus Content Manager, if you are looking at your site and you've gone through the trouble of actually having pictures loaded in the past and you notice that they're missing, it may be, and it's most likely the result that the URL that image is referencing is still referencing what used to be under the documents. That's no longer where those are stored. They are under Content Manager. So just simply go in the Content Manager, extract that URL, and then go in and update that information. Some more elements that you can add into your layout is there's tables that are available. As you see there, you're able to click on this icon here. It's going to pull up a grid where you can choose that to insert tables. In this case, the visual here says that you have a table that you're going to want to create that is 4 across and 4 down. You can use that to start the table, or you can actually use the table wizard to create that. Now, the table wizard looks like this. It ends up pulling up the various sections, and you can specify the sizes and for the tables and for the cells, and also you can make changes in regards to accessibility. Tables are a great thing to use, particularly for rates. If you want to display the rates and the vehicles are available, using a table is the way to go with that. The other use of a table is in regards to do a single cell. You can use it as a banner across the top. You can use that as one of the functions of a table. And you see also that once you create the tables, you have the ability to go ahead and add additional columns or rows, and you can delete them too using those icons. Another reference in regards to the HTML tag here that I wanted to point out. You always have the ability, once you enter or make a change to text-wise in regards to the colors of what that you're using. Now, in doing that, you're going to want to use what's called the hex color value on that. You know, when we looked at previously the WYSIWYG color, you got a lot of colors there, but those may not be the colors that you truly want to use. And that's okay. There's a way around that. And by using the HTML code, you're able to do that using the hex colors. Now, a hex color uses, instead of uses a 6-digit number that's designated for HTML. And what I would recommend as a tool is go online and find yourself an HTML color code site. This one that I found was html-color.codes. What it does is it presents to you a wide variety, and this is just a small portion of just the red shades that I found on this website. But you go through, you know, red, maroon, brown, the whole rainbow, and find the various shades of colors. And what you can do is that you can search for the hex code, this 6-digit number that's preceded with the pound sign. Find that hex code, and then what you can do is you can go into FleetCommander and replace that code. So here we have the code that we used. The hex code was the CC3333. Well, you know, if we are interested in using this maroon, what you would use is the pound 800000, and you would simply replace that within that section, and it would change the color to that portion. Another tool that you might want to consider using is in regards to actually, and this is one I'm quite proud of. This is my little trick that I learned over the years, is use PowerPoint. If you have access to PowerPoint, use the color selector to find your RGB. Now, RGB is basically the standard red, green, blue number that designates color. You'll find that if you open up the theme colors within PowerPoint, or even within Word, it'll pull up, and when you click on more colors, you'll have this basic RGB, and it gives you the red, the number for red, the number for green, the number for blue, that formulates this color right here. Now, the trick that I learned is that even though Word doesn't allow for this, I don't believe, but within PowerPoint, there's this option called the eyedropper. And with eyedropper, you're actually able to find what the RGB is for any color, for any image. You know, for the label down here in blue, I used the eyedropper, hovered over that, and then within a few seconds, the RGB number shows up for here. You know, in our welcome guy here, if you for some reason wanted to know the color of his hair, you just hover over it and it gives you that color. The color of his shirt, you know, it's periwinkle, and it gives you the RGB. With this information, you can then go to another type of site, which is an RGB to hex converter, and type in the color of his shirt, periwinkle, 178, 186, 217, and do the convert, and it gives you the hex color number for that. And then again, you just simply go into the HTML code and make those changes. Like I said, that little eyedropper is really a gem to use when you have access to that. Another tool that you might want to use if you want to make changes in FleetCommander, and you are an HTML person and you want to become one, rather than working within the HTML editor within FleetCommander exclusively, what you could use is use an HTML editor online and make those changes through that, and then copy what you have created in the HTML code and copy that into FleetCommander. Again, fine print. You know, these are examples only. We don't endorse any of these items that we showed. It's just for you to have an idea of some directions that you might be able to take, and always consult with your IT department making those changes. And also, speaking of consulting, the FleetCommander's system admin manual. It is the end all and be all for all things in regards to the HTML portion, the WYSIWYG, making those changes, those are found within section 14.1 and 14.2 of the admin manual. All righty, the last portion of what we're going to show here is some of the examples of how some of our clients have used FleetCommander. In regards to zonal content, the default is pretty plain. There is a header there. There's also a place that could be in here in regards to have a login of help text. Whenever you go to those that use the FleetCommander's login screens, this is the first thing your clients truly do see. This is the default. However, you are able to make changes. You're able to add icons to the headers. You're able to add instructions to help them in logging in, and that is through these sections, these zonal content, so the header and then the login help text. This is a great way to greet your users even before they hit that welcome page. Another zonal portion that you can do, and you might have noticed this earlier, is in regards to the footer. This again appears on all the main web pages, and an idea that you might want to start considering is maybe use this as the place to highlight your social media links. That would be a really great place. It would somebody would log in, they'll see those and be able to click on those. In regards to user registration, that's a zonal section that people are not necessarily taking advantage of additional information and instructions. By default, this is what you see, but you can customize that. You can add, in-depth, detailed information in regards to, using your pool there at the top at the register, as they begin to register themselves to use your system, and then even at the bottom in regards to the comments, if you're requesting them to give you some information about themselves in addition to what's being captured on the registration form. Another zonal portion is in regards to when they go and make their reservations. When your users are making reservations, by default, they'll see images similar to this in regards to designate who the request is for, and then what usage type they're going to be using. It doesn't have to just be that alone. You actually, through the make reservation help text, the make reservation help text usage type selection, you can add additional information. Put in there that when selecting the request is for, make sure to enter the user ID in the blank, to explain what the difference is between the various usage types. That's all a zonal content that you can make changes to. And then also in regards to the reservation, when they're putting in their information, you can give more instructions besides just what's going to be captured within the reservation form. Through the make reservation help text reservation form, you can add in information in regards to what's happening in regards to COVID restrictions, or that asking drivers to keep costs down by returning the vehicles on time. That can be expressed through this portion of that zonal content. And again, these are the highlighted ones, is what we've kind of covered through this presentation, but there's other ones that you can explore. In regards to the page content, we looked at the welcome page earlier. Your page can look something similar to this, and some of the pages that some of our clients have done just really impressed me, particularly in regards to Scott County, Minnesota. I'm going to show you several of theirs as we conclude this part of the presentation. Their welcome page, this very inviting, and in fact, they not only that, they're using this as opportunity to engage their users, to give them feedback, and feedback is actually going to be a Wednesday workshop Wednesday topic in 2 months from now. So we'll cover more about that in about 60 days or so. But yeah, another portion that you see in regards to the page content, of course, your instructions by default. This is what I see almost on every single page that's of our clients. Take the opportunity to update that, to make some changes like we did at Indiana University. Make the instructions unique to your needs there. Scott County did that with theirs. In regards to rates and vehicles. By default, there is a table that's there. And again, tables are great, but you don't just simply use the allowed for what's in there by default to stay there. You make sure that the content there refers to your operation. We've made some changes there at IU, obviously changing that for the prices reflected our needs. Also, in regards to, in addition to rates and vehicles and rates, we have locations portion. By default, this is what you see. This simple illustration of a map. Don't let that be what is yours. Change it up to again fit your needs, like we did at Indiana, like Scott County does. You're able to put in a map or that's unique to your operation. Give them the information that is necessary for them to know where they need to go to pick up their vehicles. In addition to that, the contact us. Scott County did a great job in regards to changing what was the default to something that's eye-catching. Not just simply the old one there. And then in regards to terms of use, this is another portion I just wanted to mention that I think that is helpful. Again, you may not have the need for terms of use, but you may have a different need. With engaging us at CS, we can work with you to get that changed so that the header changes and from terms of use on the menu, and then you can use that for a different purpose. You can repurpose the page. Now, again, this portion, it still tells you what the original is, and that unfortunately cannot be changed, but the content can be changed as you want to see fit. And Scott County embedded in here links to training videos. So this is a great way to express and instruct your users and your drivers. And then, again, as we close out this quickly, you have your frequently asked questions. By default, you could change that to something looks more like this. And those are, again, there's other aspects here, documents and privacy policies and regular policies, which we'll cover again later. As I went through this and looking at those sites, there were several sites that just really caught my attention, and I really do appreciate these. And some of y'all are on this call today. I really appreciate what I saw as I went through there. In closing in my portion, making these changes, leverage your resources. You may have resources that can help you with your branding, with your web development. Municipalities and businesses often have access to marketing staff. They can help you in making those changes to your site so that it reflects your brand and your values. Universities can engage their marketing programs for student-led projects. That's something that we did at IU. Your fleet staff may have some great ideas to make changes. You can also consult with, your peers within the FleetCommander community. And then also, as I was alluding to before, Agile support can help you with that. Get in contact with Joe or with myself, and we can help you have custom HTML enhancements, vehicle change requests, and we'll get you a quote on what it'll take in order to accomplish that. Was there any questions that anybody wanted to ask at this point? I don't see anything in the chat.
There are no questions, which really surprises me.
I either did a great job or I confused everybody and they just don't want to say it. So
I think you did a great job. I think the important thing to remember is that some real basics, as John mentioned, you always want to, take backup of your content, before making any changes. You want to review, your anticipated changes with your local IT folks, because again, if you're not familiar with the tools, best to ask questions in advance than make changes that could cause, you or the site and your users some issues. So it's really basics and fundamentals, but as John mentioned, there are a lot of great things that you can do here. And, it's nice. You can start small and you don't have to, eat the elephant, as they say. So fundamentally, you just want to make sure that you have a strategy to do it. And, if you need help in terms of turning things off on the menu, or things that you don't want to use, It's really important. You can certainly reach out to us if you don't know how to do that, and we're certainly here to help you do that. Fundamentally, the thing that the implementation team always talks about is, every time they kick off a project, they go through all of these areas, but fundamentally, for whatever reason, it's never top of mind. So by the time a site gets live, folks may not have the same level of focus that they might have, at other times. So we're here to help you, certainly get better and to make your site shine and certainly support your business in a better way. And again, some of these things we've talked about before. If we can help you with anything, we're getting a lot of other information, from users about coming back to the office and restarting operations and activity picking up. So, if you need help, with your users, or if you've got new users, let us know. Certainly happy to help you with any incremental training. Certainly we've been talking to a lot of folks about odometer issues and how we can improve that for you. As well as, things around, consolidating your data, right? Making the system work for you. We haven't really talked about some of the new changes that are coming on in FleetCommander soon, but over the summer, we'll be introducing some great tools that'll help you get better total cost of ownership information. So, that'll be a focus of us during the summer. And it should be a lot of fun in terms of, helping you really get the true value out of your vehicles, out of your fleet, and get them fully utilized. And John, if you would, let's talk about the next couple of sessions. So as you know, we do it monthly, and we've got, another couple of sessions teed up already. So, John already mentioned earlier, in May, we're going to be talking about, fleet policy. We kicked off Workshop Wednesday with email, and we're going to get into some more advanced email configuration and troubleshooting being the operative word, and then feedback, because feedback's really important to your fleets. Some folks use it, most folks don't, but you really need to think about using it. And so hopefully these will help you. And once we get through May, we'll be talking about, obviously getting into August. And I think for August, we'll probably look to do some of the new enhancements in FleetCommander about, total cost of ownership and configuration, because it's great stuff. It's going to really help you if you have, designs to allocate overhead perhaps, or, replacement fund. So there's some really cool stuff, on its way. And I think with that, we still don't have any questions. So I think with that, it's probably a wrap today. John, you did a great job.
Thank you, Joe.
Everybody, thank you for attending. We truly appreciate you as clients and your business. And as I mentioned at the outset, we will make sure that we get this off to you shortly. And please do give us your feedback, because without your feedback, we're making guesses, and we'd rather give you content that can really truly help you. So thanks again.